On my last episode, Strength Unfucked, I revealed strength as one of the most enduring human virtues. I also tore down the common confusion surrounding its definition and exposed the practical limits of sport-specific training for the general public. Since then, my inbox has been flooded with a version of the same question. That's great, but what do I actually do in the gym if I'm not supposed to just squat for eternity? This question is interesting because it ignores the entire premise that strength is an individual pursuit and desperately searches for a universal, absolute answer. It assumes the how is an exercise or a rep scheme. The answer isn't a program. The answer lies in a fundamental biological laws that dictate every single strength adaptation you will ever have. When I talk about strength, I don't distinguish between its physical, mental, or emotional forms. Strength is a universal attribute. To be strong of character, resisting the urge to bend your ideals, is just as challenging as overcoming a heavy barbell or even holding yourself together through the agony of grief. They all demand a practice of resistance, a signal to hold the line despite the overwhelming urge to fold. In my experience, when people lose their physical capacity for strength, whether through injury or just years of neglect, their mental framework and often their moral character tend to fail soon after. Strength is the attribute of overcoming. We foster it to improve our outcomes, and this is done behaviorally. This alone should be a massive realization. Strength is an action, and it is not a mindless one. When we ask to develop an attribute, what we are really inviting in are its antagonists. To wish for strength is to acknowledge what is weak and finally address it. Think about it. To rid your house of pests, you first have to attract them to bring the problem into the open so you can eliminate it. True strength training isn't just lifting weights, it's a humbling acknowledgement of our own shortcomings. To do this, we have to understand strength as a behavior. Behavior is just an action and reaction to a stimulus. If you constantly break or fold under pressure, you lack the desired trait. If you break yourself trying to resist, you don't understand the limitations of your strength, which is just as useless. Learning to be strong is about accurately assessing your limitations and then, in an attempt to bolster them, not allowing those perceived limits to become a permanent ceiling. I believe we are naturally driven towards expressions of strength, but this inclination gets hijacked by social pressure, which teaches us to chase external rewards, a certain look, a perception, a number, instead of trusting our internal sensations. It's why we hear the phrase, stronger than they look. It's a phrase that perfectly captures our deep societal confusion about what it means to be strong. Today, we are going to tear down the two concepts holding most of you back from developing real applicable strength: the Law of Specificity and the Law of Accommodation. We'll uncover the 4 ways you can actually affect tissue, and why most people are just guessing when they choose an exercise instead of pinpointing the exact tissue that needs work. We'll explore how strength training acts as an energetic in the body and on the personality, how you can use it to foster a deep sense of self, as a tool for reflection, and as a weapon to accomplish what you set out to do. And finally, we'll get practical. We'll break down what a real strength session looks like when the goal is to target specific limitations, and how you can integrate this into what you're already doing. Buckle up. Welcome to the Unfucked podcast. My name is Michael Blevins. I've been training some of the world's most elite performers for over 15 years, from iconic actors and athletes to soldiers and CEOs. I'm an entrepreneur, an athlete, and an obsessive when it comes to human behavior.
Man looks in the abyss. There's nothing staring back at him. At that moment, man finds his character. And that is what keeps him out of the abyss. I think I understand.
Let's kick this off with a truth that will hurt some feelings. If you get hurt, you are weak. That isn't personal. It's not a comment on your value. It is a simple description of your tissue's resilience or an honest acknowledgement of your vulnerabilities. Yes, some forces are impossible to predict or prepare for. Injury at some point is inevitable, but strength development should protect you from what you are exposed to regularly. Training reveals where you are vulnerable. Stated another way, not training your weaknesses is not strength training. The entire point is to improve the tissues, to increase their capacity to resist or express maximal forces. It doesn't matter if that tissue is in your bicep or in your brain, they are inseparable. Strength training is specific. The range of motion, the orientation of the joint, the rate of force, even the order of the phases, they each produce their own distinct adaptation. Most people completely ignore this, even people who have read the best literature on the subject. I know because I made this mistake for years, jumping straight to the reps and sets, ignoring the warnings about just lifting heavy. But understanding these biological laws explains why so many common training models produce such mediocre and often damaging results. This principle states that all training adaptations are directly and uniquely tied to the specific demands imposed during training. In plain English, you get good at exactly what you do. Nothing more, nothing less. Adaptations are not general. To achieve a general holistic fitness, you must train a wide variety of specific adaptations concurrently. Trying to get good at one thing means you will be bad at many things. Attempting to get good at many things means you will never really be good at that one thing. This means no single lift is king. Compound lifts like the squat, bench, and deadlift are commonly sold as general strength builders. This is only true for the completely untrained. For anyone else, these movements are sports in their own right. They require specific application to create specific adaptations. This doesn't mean they're useless, but when they make up the majority or all of your training, the majority of your adaptations will be for their exact execution and very little else. The crossover to other activities is not what you've been led to believe. Culturally, this is controversial, but according to biology, strength training must be hyper-specific to the weakness of the individual. This means calling into question the holiness of common exercises. A back squat at a specific load will cause completely different adaptations across different individuals. What we call a leg exercise is often an exercise limited by the spine. If you want to be strong, you have to think and problem solve. This flies in the face of the stereotype of the strong but dim-witted lifter. But I guarantee you, people do not get truly strong by mindlessly following a program. Let's dive deeper. Specificity isn't just about the exercise, it's about the categories. Periodicity. How often and at what rate do you need to express force? Once every 4 years on a world stage, or lifting boxes for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for a 40-year career? Those are entirely different qualities of strength. Intensity, the percentage of your maximal voluntary contraction. The closer you get to your absolute structural limits, the more specific and risky the adaptation. Responsiveness, is the effort proactive or reactive? In a powerlifting meet, you have a few minutes to dictate the terms. Bracing for an unexpected impact in football gives you fractions of a second. You control neither the timing nor the force required. Duration, the time required for a single expression and the interval between the expression. A powerlifting meet might be 3 attempts over 8 hours. Most real-world demands are completely unknown, which is why injuries happen outside of the gym. Orientation, the position of your joints and tissues when the force occurs. This is more than just the name of the movement. Phasing, the sequence of lengthening, eccentric, isometric, and concentric. The order itself creates a unique adaptation. For many of you, I just made strength training infinitely more complicated. For others, I just answered the root of your training frustrations. I'll come back to the application, but first we need to understand why even the perfect plan eventually falls apart. This biological law states the response of a biological object to a given constant stimulus decreases over time. Your body is smart. It gets efficient, and efficiency is the enemy of adaptation. The more you do of an exercise, the less stimulus that exercise provides. This is why progressive overload and periodization were invented, but most people only attack this by changing the weight or the volume, and that only works for so long. Look back at those categories under specificity. You have a whole arsenal of variables to manipulate. Exercises are repeated patterns, and repeated patterns are doomed by the laws of accommodation. So I recommend a shift. Stop thinking in terms of exercises and start thinking in terms of stressing tissues through a variety of orientations, loads, and ranges. Accommodation is adaptation's twin. In sport, we ride the wave of accommodation to perfect a competitive lift. But in the pursuit of general fitness, repetitive patterns yield diminishing returns and create imbalances. The people who never change the what worked for them years ago are the ones who suffer setback after setback. They blindly believe that the exercise is good, never questioning that they are forcing their biology to revolt. Think of the squat everyday program. We all saw how that ended for most people. And it's not just about barbells. Endurance athletes face the same thing, just on a longer timeline. They train their aerobic system, but eventually the musculoskeletal system accommodates to that one repetitive pattern. The result? Overuse injuries. The biology simply wasn't trained for anything else. For those of you training for longevity, understanding this is vital. Our entire model of physical education is based on sport preparation, an activity with a limited expression and a logical end date. But you don't have a logical end date. Using sport to get healthy is like using credit card debt to get rich. Accommodation, in this analogy, is the loan shark. The more you rely on that one pattern, the higher the interest rate gets. It's no wonder so many accomplished athletes are found physically bankrupt later in life. To fight accommodation, you need qualitative changes, not just quantitative ones. Move from bilateral to unilateral, and the sagittal plane to the frontal or transverse plane. Introduce new exercises. Add completely new and novel movements to your routine. Change equipment. Use bands, chains, kettlebells, sandbags, anything to alter the stimulus. Manipulate rep ranges, rest periods, and set structures. Change the phasing. This is huge. Switch from a standard squat to a dead stop, bottoms up squat. Use bands to amplify tension in strong positions and reduce it in weak ones. The effect is drastic and keeps the stimulus novel. Think objectively. Your training and your life don't need to mirror each other, but they damn well better be related. A variety of signals sends a variety of messages, and that is what keeps the adaptation process alive. Understanding these two laws will change how you see the gym. A bigger bench press gives you one thing, a bigger bench press. It doesn't give you general applicable strength. If that's your goal, fine, but if you want the kind of strength that supports a long, capable, and resilient life, then you need to think deeper. This is why we focus on one constant in our training, and that is creativity. It isn't a ruse or a clever slogan. It is the foundation for which we continue to adapt fitness aspects. So how do we apply this? How do we manipulate the stimulus? We can borrow from the strongest humans on the planet. Louis Simmons of Westside Barbell famously used and refined the conjugate method, and in it he describes something profound. There are only 4 ways to affect tissue. They are in order of effectiveness. Number 1, maximal effort. The goal is to move the heaviest weight possible, period. Number 2, dynamic effort. The intention is to accelerate the weight as fast as humanly possible. Number 3, repetition method. The focus is on time under tension and volume. Number 4, sub-maximal repetition not till failure. Think warm-ups, accessory work, and prehab rehab. This is the order of their effectiveness. If you want to get strong, you have to lift heavy. Think load, not weight, as in using leverage to express high contraction rates. At the opposite end, doing a few casual sets of a few reps, what most people end up doing at the gym, is sending the absolute weakest signal to your biology. You can apply these methods to your current program and see massive improvements, but we can go deeper. You don't have to lift weights in the traditional sense. Some of the most potent stimuli are eccentrics and isometrics. They allow you to train ranges and capacities that traditional exercises simply cannot address because the focus is on the movement, not the feeling. If varied phasing isn't in your program, you are leaving a ton of potential on the table. The best way to start is to support the training you are already doing. Apply these concepts to your current exercises. Challenge your squat with a time-based set. Try to hold a squat for 40 seconds and feel the difference. Or find the heaviest set of 5 done from the bottom up. Try using the lightest weight possible, but with the highest contraction rate possible. You'll immediately notice recruitment skyrockets because the fear of failing the lift vanishes. Once you realize that loading is an internal signal, training becomes a creative exploration of controlling yourself from the inside out. You'll see your traditional lifts improve without even training them because you've trained the joints and tissues at their specific points of limitation. Most of my squats are now single leg variations that rarely use external load, but instead use angles, ranges, or time to demand a contraction equal to a maximal lift with far less risk. Here's a question you should be asking. How does my strength training actually cross over into my daily life? How does it inform my behavior? When I talk about strength as an energetic, I'm referring to how it shapes our actions or how the lack of it collapses our identity. When the average person chases strength, they're usually looking for external markers of value. A select few pursue it as an identity through sport, and this is who we usually get our instruction from. But there's a danger here. Maximal strength expression drastically increases your sensitivity. This is a full system adaptation. Nervous, muscular, skeletal, hormonal, and yes, even emotional. This only becomes a problem when the energetic of the maximal expression isn't balanced with the requisite confidence to perform it. That confidence isn't just believing in yourself. It's the mountain of data built from the endless repetition and submaximal work. It's why we say the foundation for true strength is strength endurance and hypertrophy. The two balance each other. If strength is only ever expressed maximally, your nervous system's ability to demand force will outpace the supportive tissue's ability to tolerate it. You will get injured. This leads to a loss of confidence, which means maximal strength can no longer be expressed. Worse, your nervous system is now primed to be hypersensitive. If your entire identity is layered on top of that strength, that sensitivity has nowhere to go but sideways, into an emotional crisis. It's rarely somebody's goal to have a maximal emotional outburst, but it does happen, right on the precipice of an identity crisis. The real balance of training is ensuring that what you are doing is actually making you better. The exercises you choose transfer to real behavioral correlates in your lived experience. When the goal is just a look or an arbitrary number, you will build more problems than you solve. Strength isn't something you achieve, it's something you sustain. Think of it like hunger. You can never eat so much in one day that you'll never have to eat food again. There will never be a day you are strong enough. It's a factor you will address for the rest of your life. The illusion is that getting good at exercises is the same as getting strong. It's not. If you fail to address what is weak, if you aren't actively creating ways to foster your limitations, you will remain weak. It's difficult to give effective universal training advice for one simple reason. Our deficiencies are uniquely our own. A generic plan often fails because it doesn't address your specific limitations. It doesn't know what you need. So today I'm going to use my own lower body strength day as an example to walk you through a practical, more effective methodology. We're going to move beyond just doing exercises and learn how to assess our own limitations and then choose the right tools to fix them. First, let's talk about the lower body. Most people hear that and they immediately think of leg muscles, but the hip joint is often the true limiting factor. And I want you to remember this crucial concept. A squat doesn't build a healthy hip, it requires one. If you only train the squat, you might just be strengthening your own bad habits or poor movement patterns. So we need to first assess how the hip joint operates by itself. Our assessment tool for this is the hip controlled articular rotation, or a hip CAR. Here's how you perform it. You're going to do 5 to 15 slow reps, controlled reps on each side. The key here is control, not speed. This is not a warm-up, it's a diagnostic test. As you're doing it, you're looking for where you lack control. Now, you should avoid clunks and pinches and anything that feels kind of nervy and anything that is like acutely painful. But really what you're looking for is where you lose tension. This gives you a precise map of your hip's limitation. And if you pay attention to the orientation and you kind of understand the underlying physiology, you'll really be able to hone in your movements and training to directly affect where your hip is weak. I'd suggest using a mirror to make sure the movement is truly coming from your hip and not from your spine, trying to compensate. Now, for me and for many other people, the biggest limitation is in hip internal rotation. That lack of control forces my body into bad habits during a squat, which eventually shows up as maybe back pain. So now that I've identified my primary limitation, I can address it directly. Once you know the problem, you can pick a specific stimulus to address it. Here are a few examples of how I target my limitations. First, let's use method 1, the max effort isometric. To improve my limited internal rotation, I use a protocol called PAILS and RAILS. That stands for progressive and regressive angular isometric loading. I get into the end range of motion of my hip internal rotation and I hold that passive stretch for 2 minutes. The reason I might do this is because the 2-minute stretch has been shown through a ton of research to relax the muscle belly so that you can get access to the connective tissue, which usually lies at the end of the range of motion. Then, for between 10 to 15 seconds, I ramp up into a maximum effort contraction, trying to push my leg deeper into the stretch. That's the PAIL, where you're progressing it. Then I instantly switch gears and try to pull my leg out of the stretch with maximal effort. That's the RAIL. I'll be honest, this process feels very strange at first. Where you lack strength, you lack sensitivity. That difficulty is the training. You are teaching your nervous system to control a range of motion it couldn't access before. Next, method 2, dynamic effort. I also have trouble controlling the turnaround at the bottom of a squat. To fix this, I work on deceleration forces using the dynamic method. I'll anchor a resistance band and perform a hip flexion kick. The goal is simple. Kick into the band as fast and as hard as you can, then slam on the brakes, stopping your leg as close to your maximum hip flexion as you possibly can in control. This is a very demanding exercise. I would recommend respecting it with proper rest. And finally, method 3, repetitions till failure. I might want to build endurance in another part of the hip, like external rotation. Here, I can use repetitions to failure, but failure here doesn't just mean your muscles give out. It means the point at which you can no longer perform a clean, controlled rep. The moment your technique breaks down, the set is over. And we use the term technique kind of loosely because all of these orientations and movement patterns are made up. So really by technique, what I mean is the movement pattern that is giving you the sensations and feedback that you're looking for in the part of the structure that you're working. So after this targeted joint work is done, after my hips are prepped and my limitations have been addressed, that is when I move on to my main muscular development work, like squat variations or single leg exercises. This is also where I place my most exhausting exercises like heavy eccentrics, because I know I won't be much use after them. This style of training, it doesn't look sexy on Instagram. A video of a max effort isometric won't get you any likes. It will confuse people who think training is just about lifting a certain weight. But here's the difference. Addressing your specific limitations is the lowest hanging fruit in your training. It takes the least amount of stress to create the biggest return on your effort. These efforts are measured by how you feel and move, not by a number you can compare with others. So I want you to put your ego aside and ask yourself this: does your training make you feel better because of the actual progress you're making? Or does it make you feel better because of the praise you get for how hard it looks? The goal is to train for internal improvement, not external validation. That's episode 2 of Strength Unfucked. If this was useful, comment, share, and like. Until next time.